So welcome, we're so glad you're here. Some of you may be here for the first time today, and some of you, this may be your repeat. And so we're very glad that you're here. We're just offering a set of free webinars to help teachers across New Mexico first come together as a community and have somebody to talk to that they can relate to who's doing the same thing they are. And secondly, have a spot where we can unpack reentry documents together and think about what does instruction look like in our virtual setting and how can we support each other. And so those are the big goals behind what we're doing here today in these 4 webinars. All right, so on your chat, we want to make sure that you're able to introduce yourself, but on your name, we want to think about what grade level best represents you today. We're going to go in breakout rooms, and so find your name. We'd like you to put your grade level number in front of your name. So Allie, would you say something so that your picture pops up and people can see your name?
Sure. So I've renamed myself 7 Allie Conway because I did teach 6th, 7th, and 8th, but there's just something about those 7th graders, you know, the middle children of the middle school years. I love them. So I'm 7 Allie Conway, and so I've renamed myself that way.
If y'all would do that, it would really help us out in putting you into breakout rooms later in the session. I think we're good there. You feel good about that, Allie? We're just getting people grounded, right? So many of you may know this, but if you're a new participant today, just a little bit about our history. We're a group called Mathematically Connected Communities, and the 3 communities that we're bringing together are the education department at New Mexico State University, public school teachers that teach mathematics, and the mathematics department at New Mexico State University. So really trying to bring 3 entities together to support kids in New Mexico doing well in mathematics. We began as a US funded partnership with a math science partnership, and since then we have found many different venues of funding, and we continue to want to do the work, so we write grants and do things of that nature to make sure that we can still support. And so we are a group of math teachers that's very passionate about supporting other math teachers and helping New Mexico be great. And so some of you may even see your pictures there in the picture, which is fantastic. You may have been to some of our summer math labs. And I think one thing that continues for us as a group is we believe in long-term relationships. And so if you're on this listserv, you're kind of on this listserv forever, and we're glad that you're here today. So today we are at number 2 live webinar event, Unpacking Important Mathematics Reentry Documents. And so I'm curious, if you are like, I've heard the word reentry document, give me a thumbs up on your screen there. Okay, so we're gonna look at unpacking today, number 2. Please know, if today's your first time and you are interested in what we talked about during live webinar number 1, it is on our website. So the best way to find the recorded webinar is to go to our website, which is mc2.nmsu.edu. Don't put in the HTTP, just mc2.nmsu.edu, and scroll down just about an inch, and you'll see there's a button that says for the recorded webinar, click here, and it will take you right there. So it's on our home page. And so if you're interested in that, please go to our website and check it out. All right, let's see what's coming in number 3. 2 weeks from now, we're going to be looking at structuring accelerated learning and reentry. So really trying to think about what accelerated learning means today, but then what does that look like? That'll be coming in our 3rd session. And then finally in our 4th session, looking at models that really support the prioritized standards that are present in the reentry documents. And many of those standards will come across this evening and talk about those. We know that your learning is better when you have time to engage with each other and engage with the documents rather than engaging with us. And so we're moving rather swiftly to some breakout rooms to get us started in thinking. So if you were to think about the norms, you're going to go into a breakout room with your grade level, and you're going to be looking at grade level specific reentry documents and also general documents that apply to all of us about acceleration and the intention of acceleration. And so if you know that that is what you're going to be doing, really engaging as a grade level, I'd like you to think about what's a norm that will really support your learning in that space, And what's a norm that you think may support the other people in your room? Like I heard Gadsden Middle talking about, I love my 7th grade team, and thinking about how do you bring in the other 7th grade folks that you see when you get into that breakout room, and really include everybody and understand where everybody's at. Because I'm sure we have many similarities, and we probably have some pretty specific things to our situations too. So just take a minute and think about what norm would help you. And what might you do on purpose to support the others that you're communing with this evening?
For our offering for our team builder with our small groups, we've got 2 different offerings. The first offering is from Dan Meyer from his blog, and a teacher made a great card sort from it. And it's thinking about quarantine and how it's impacted our tech habits. And this was created from an article from the New York Times. And so that is one of the offerings when you're in a small group to kind of check that out. There's Desmo's card sort, and the link is also in your handout. But we know that COVID-19 and looking at real data can sometimes be sensitive, and we want to be mindful of that with our teachers and with our students. And so we have an alternative offering, which is the next slide there, which also comes from Dan Meyer's blog. And it has us thinking about this idea of really big numbers and how we make sense of them. And it's this question of, can we model generosity with mathematics? And so as we see different volunteer efforts and different efforts for donating, and so here's another space for you in your small group, if it's a more comfortable space, to have conversations around math in our small breakout rooms. Are there any questions before we get into breakout rooms about what we're doing? We've got 2 offerings for just an invitation to talk about some math for about 10 minutes.
I want to ask you, when you get into your breakout room, bring yourself to unmute and put your videos on so that you can meet people and talk with them. And I think we're ready to go.
So we're going to open all those rooms. Hopefully you were able to look at one of those activities. We just kind of wanted to ground there. And, you know, sometimes we can look at the same document or the same data set and interpret things in very different ways. And so that's what's going to transition us now into looking at these reentry documents.
In the chat is the link to the curriculum and instruction page for the New Mexico PET. So we're going to spend some time with our breakout rooms exploring our grade level instructional scopes. But before we do, we'd like to take about 5 minutes to explore just the curriculum and instruction page. The protocol that we hope to use is that you can turn off your video camera for about 5 minutes and you can start looking at this page. And as you do, you might have some questions or some wonderings that come up. Please record those in the chat. So we are going to use those questions to kind of lead our discussions when we go into our breakout rooms with our grade levels. So at this time, I invite you to turn off your video camera so you can take some time to just kind of navigate through that page where the instructional scope documents live. Okay, friends, it's been about 5 minutes. If you have any final questions, any wonderings, please make sure to put them in the chat. And in the chat, I am also going to put the scavenger hunt. So we're going to be thinking about item number 2 in the scavenger hunt. In the scavenger hunt, item 2 asks us to find the core tenets for acceleration and the recommendations to accelerating student learning. And this document can be accessed if you click in the reentry guidance instructional acceleration link. So that should probably be step 3 in your curriculum and instruction page. Find step 3, and then if you go into your reentry guidance for instructional acceleration, you'll find this document and you can find the tenets for acceleration, I think on page 2. For this second scavenger hunt, we're going to explore the ideas that are in this section. Take a few minutes to think about what resonates with what you're already doing well according to the recommendations. Like, what are we already doing and what wonderings do we have? Or where do we need a little more support when we're thinking about the recommendations offered in this document? And again, we can put those in the chat. If you'd like, then we can collect those questions, maybe take those back with us as we start looking at the instructional scopes for our grade bands.
I just kind of want to do a human check on everybody and see, like, are y'all doing out there? Thumbs up, and just kind of let us know if you're doing okay.
I know we can get a little lost in these documents. They are a little overwhelming. So thank you, Michelle. What are your thoughts? As I'm starting to look at these documents, maybe I have some questions, maybe some wonderings. If you want to add those, we can click. Friends, does it feel like this might be a good place for us to jump into the instructional scopes in breakout rooms?
I think so. It took Erica probably 3 or 4 times just to explain to me how to get to these documents on the website. So if you're in a space of overwhelm, that's why we're here. We're going to go back into our breakout rooms, and we want to spend really the rest of the night and that we're here together, really kind of getting more comfortable with the offerings that there are around reentry. So in our grade level breakout rooms, and I know some of us are in mixed grade band breakout rooms, which is great too, because we get that perspective. K through 8 teachers, you're going to spend a little time, about 5 minutes, looking at the domain specific recommendations that the PED is offering. For you high school folks and you secondary folks, Achieve the Core just released their support for instructional content prioritization. And so what I've done is I've taken 2 pages out of that 60-page document, which kind of explains their reasoning for prioritizing the particular standards that they're looking at. So that's the starting place. That's kind of that digestible chunk. Once you've moved from that, we're going to go into that green box on that slide there. Spend some time in your instructional scope. If you teach Algebra 1, click on that link for the mathematics instructional scope and go to Algebra 1 and just start kind of making sense of those documents. Same thing with Kinder 4th, go to your grade level and then take some time to explore. We want you to focus on what resonates with you and what questions these documents bring up for you. Are there any questions about our task in breakout rooms? Remember, in the breakout rooms, SOS to the host. I'll get your message and I can pop in there and help if needed. But work together, spend some time unpacking and having those conversations around these reentry documents. There were some fantastic questions and comments that were brought up. What does this replace? And acceleration is really a misnomer. If those are takeaways that you're feeling right now, Erika, I know, can you speak just like 30 seconds on that first question? What does it replace?
Yeah, it doesn't replace anything. So the PED is offering the resources as a tool to help you plan, and specifically for any districts that didn't have a lot of the support. This is really a guide, and it is designed to help you plan along with your high quality instructional materials.
So when we unpack some of these documents and we start reading how acceleration is being defined, it's really critical as teachers that we all have a common understanding of acceleration in this school year in 2020.
What's the difference between the bold print and the blue-green bold print?
Yes, so the bold print standards are your prioritized standards. And again, when we say prioritize, it means the focus, the targeted instruction. We're making connections here, but we're not leaving any of the other standards behind. This is just to prioritize learning. And the colors are the conceptual understanding. It's your green standards. And your black standards are your procedural skills and fluency. And then your blue ones are your application. So that's just a way for you to kind of differentiate from those standards.
Pay attention to those green ones, friends, as we're looking at acceleration. They're the grounding places for children.
So I want you to think about going through the documents today and this experience. What do you know now that you would share with a colleague, that you would go out tomorrow, that you're going to text them right now and say, I just found out. So put that in the chat if you have an offering for us. Some you would share with a colleague about reentry. And then what have you learned that excites you? It's easy to go into the personal concerns and I can't do it and the management, but if you had to pick something that is exciting you about planning for students' mathematics learning in 2020, what is it? So if you could take a moment to reflect and put that information in the chat, that would be wonderful. And then the link down there is for a Desmos. And when you have a minute, it's just fun and it's kind of funny. And we hope that it makes you laugh a little because we could all use a laugh. If there's any other questions too, please make sure you put them in the chat. We're also looking for that reflection. What would you share with a colleague? What is exciting you about math in 2020?
We really get at the models and thinking about how can we use some models in a virtual setting to really help with the conceptual. Like we're really starting to think about adding and subtracting within a certain number range, and what are the models and tools that we can use virtually to support that. It's about engagement, and we talked a lot about questioning. Like, not that it solves everything, but what are the questions that we could ask? They're not solutions, they're ideas, because people are navigating the same stuff as you. And one idea that came up was like a norms activity, but a norms activity that really builds like the why are we here? Right? It's not just me that has to manage everybody. Like, we're all here to learn something, and how do we participate, and how does that look different? And I remember we were talking about cooperative learning. We were face to face, and kids weren't looking at each other. They weren't responding to each other. So she literally made a table of listening. What does it look like? What does it sound like? There were things on it like it looks like eye contact. It looks like leaning forward. And then kids actually really had to kind of consider, what does engagement look like, or participating? And so the conversation we had the other day at school was, how would that work for a virtual setting? Like, do we need to take the time with kids to think about, what does engagement look like when I'm here virtually? What's my responsibility in this community that we're building here? And so it really came back to the foundations of a standards-based learning environment, and how do we build that environment?
We'll be meeting up here again September 9th and 23rd. Remember, you register the Thursday before. We hope to see you all back.